Good evening and welcome to tonight's session of our ACS Industry Insights Leaders Series. This series features Australian leaders from a range of sectors who will share their expertise and their insights on how technology and innovation contributes to transforming our economy. My name is Daniel Rayhanner, Chief Operations Officer of the ACS, and although we meet virtually tonight, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. To kick off tonight's discussion, I'm delighted to welcome Adam Schuck. Adam is a technology leader, repeat startup founder and advisor. He's had key roles in early stage startups through to global companies like Google and Twitter, between places like Sydney, San Francisco and New York. He's been the Director of Engineering at Canva for the past 2 years, leading a team of data scientists, analysts and software engineers that work on building Canva's products and services. Tonight, Adam is sharing his experience in building a software system from scratch through to senior management for large engineering organisations with distributed teams. This evening, we'll have the opportunity to ask Adam some of your questions at the end of the conversation, so please use the question function at the top of your screen. Thank you for joining us tonight, Adam.
Thanks very much for having me tonight, Daniel.
Well, let's dive straight in. You've had a very interesting career and have a great CV, being Google Australia's first engineering hire and then working with Twitter in the US. Could you share your career journey with us that's led you to Canva?
Absolutely, Daniel. Thanks. So I was very fortunate when I finished university with my timing that I joined Google and was the first engineering person that they interviewed in Australia, which was amazing timing. Back when Google didn't even have a dedicated office. We were in pay-by-the-hour Regis spaces, and now as many buildings. I worked on Google Maps, Google Wave, and then after that I moved to New York to join a startup called Julpan, which was half Australians, half ex-Googlers. And at Julpan we built a search engine, a real-time search engine that beat Google at its own game, and ended up selling that to Twitter and forming the New York Twitter engineering team, which was really exciting. Beyond that, I've been involved in a bunch of startups, as you said. One of the exciting ones was Zeetings, which was an Australian company that was Canva's first ever acquisition. And since then, I've been advising, investing in startups, but for the last 2 years, my main focus has been working at Canva, where we're empowering the world to design.
Thank you very much. So you've worked in a few tech hotspots around the world. How does Australia's tech landscape compare globally, and what do we do well, and what are some of those areas that we can improve on?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience for me getting to work San Francisco, New York, Australia, and compare them. One thing that's really stood out to me is that we have incredible talent in Australia. And when I moved to America, something that stood out to me is there weren't as many opportunities that excited me. Whereas when I returned after my 5-year stint in New York, really the movement was taking off. Lots of startups, lots of buzz. Now we're seeing multiple unicorns in Australia. So for me, it's a really exciting time to be in technology in Australia. And I think one of the key takeaways for me now is borders no longer matter. You can really start a global company from anywhere in the world. Obviously, that includes Australia. You're not shackled to Silicon Valley, for example. So I think we're doing really well. We're solving some real-world global problems from Australia rather than these kind of made-up artificial problems. We've got amazing engineering talent from Australia and all over the world. And I call out Canva's definitely a great example of that, or really a shining beacon. We're a global company. It was started in Australia, yet we're not limited by that. We've got world-class, best-in-breed investors. We've got users in over 190 countries, 30 million plus active users. So we really built a truly global product that's reaching to people all around the world.
Thanks, and it's a fantastic story. There's been a decline in skilled migration and migration more generally, and latest figures show it was down by nearly 30,000 in the last quarter. How can Australian businesses source the best tech talent, which is something obviously you're passionate about, and that you've been able to do successfully across those organisations you've worked in, to make sure that we remain competitive? And
Absolutely.
And that engineering talent that you talk about that Australia has a lot of, how have you been able to find some of it?
That's as the company grows and grows, and our ambition is always exceeding what we're working on. I'd really call out skill migration. It is important. It really is an important part of the picture when we're talking about building these global companies like Canva. So I'd really like to just emphasize its value. For me personally, I have through my career been incredibly lucky to have learned from world-class, people with decades of experience, veterans who've been there and done that. And to me, that's one of the huge advantages with the skill migration is being able to import that experience. I think, to build that global product, you need a global mindset. And to have a global mindset, certainly having representation from not just Australia, but around the world really plays into that. If you look at Canva, over a third of our team is from overseas. We are a truly diverse company. And definitely, I kind of called out that story of how I was interviewed for Google back in the day. The origin of story of Canva actually pays its respects to skilled migration in a way, in that if it weren't for the fact that we had my boss back at Google, Lars Rasmussen, who he was Danish, based in America. He was based in Australia when they kicked off Google Maps. That spawned this incredible office in Australia for Google. It's now quite large, but from that spawned, if you will, a bit of a mafia of, we had the Canva's CTO and Chief Product Officer. Both of them worked with me back at Google, and Lars introduced them to Mel and Cliff, our founders at Canva. So it's safe to say if it weren't for skilled migration, Canva would not be where it is today.
Wow. At the ACS, we're passionate about making Australia a world leader in tech talent. Canva has been able to keep a majority of its talent on Australian shores, as you just said, or you've said previously, despite strong international competition. So how do you attract and then keep talent in Australia rather than going offshore?
That's right. Our majority of our tech talent is based in Australia, and it's really exciting to be part of that. For me, the key to your question there is working on amazing global products. I think that's what inspires talent and great engineering people. And in Canva's case, we have a big, meaty global mission, designed for everyone. Whereas, when I moved to New York, I'd say there wasn't obviously as many companies in Australia where you could make that statement. So I'd say now, definitely with the technological shifts, the cultural shifts, you can really build a global company from anywhere. If you can build a global company from anywhere, why wouldn't you want to do it from Australia? Because it's such a great country. I mean, for me, I've got my family here. On top of that, I love the lifestyle. I don't need to sell everyone listening on the sunshine, the coffee, the beaches. Having that balanced lifestyle where you don't constantly feel the need to get out of town. It's amazing to have the best of both worlds, be able to work on that big global mission, but from Australia.
Thank you. And just to follow up there, culture is a big part of Canva's DNA. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And also, are there any other Aussie organisations that you're really conscious of and I suppose would believe that would mirror those of Canva's values and culture as well?
Yeah, Canva, we take our culture and our values extremely seriously. I think one of the definitions of culture is what you reward and what you punish. And I think at Canva we really do emphasize and reinforce at every company-wide meeting we have what our values are. And there's some really big, inspiring values. Like being a force for good, empowering others. There's very outward focused, and I think that mission shows in every part of the business, through to how our Vibe team, what we call our facilities team, supports us and operates us and treats us really well, through to what you see in the product, through to how we do customer service and how we interact with our customers. So that is definitely one of the things that attracts people to Canva, and it's contagious. And it comes all the way from the top. Our founders, Mel, Cliff, and Cam, they really are ambassadors for the values. Rather than saying one thing and doing another, it's really you're struck by it when you work at Canva. As for other companies, I mean, for me, it's great to see just as I mentioned, when I left Australia, you could point to maybe Google and Atlassian, whereas now seeing all these different unicorns popping up around Australia, to me, that's a testament to the thriving startup scene, and that we're starting to figure some of this out and really growing that ecosystem here.
Thank you. And Canva recently crossed $5 billion in market value. The Australian Treasurer recently announced that we are officially in our first recession in nearly 30 years. How or what advice would you give to Australian businesses that are looking to grow in this current environment?
I'd say there's a lot of opportunity in downturn, and some of the best startups have been created when there's been challenging times in the world. I'd say for Canva, one of our keys is we solve a real need. It's not a made-up problem. It really is a problem that the world cares about. We've been cash flow positive since 2017. And why is that? It's because people see value and they're really happy to pay for that. And that's given us the luxury that we've positioned ourselves that we're able to weather these severe storms. So it would certainly be advice to companies out there, solve a real need and making sure that you're setting yourselves up. Beyond that, what is Canva doing, not just for ourselves? We're also working hard to support the community and doing our part to help others grow. And in our case, when all of coronavirus came down, we went to great lengths to make sure we didn't let go of any of our contractors or support staff, even if there wasn't work for them. One thing that I was really proud of that we did is, at Canva, we get free breakfast and lunch and treated very nicely. Of course, there's a lot of food suppliers and florists and et cetera, coffee makers behind the scenes who support us that could have been out of business with all of us working from home. And so our Canva used that as a really great opportunity to support the local communities. So some people could elect to receive a hamper every week of those supplier source goods to keep them, these businesses that lost 80%, 90% of their revenue overnight. We were in a position that we could support them, or alternatively let staff donate to charity or support the local environment. And I'd say another one, I'd just love to call out the not-for-profit story. Canva's been, we have a not-for-profit program, 30,000 plus not-for-profits around the world, and we've recently extended that to support public health organizations. So I guess that's like how Canva's approached it for our own business's health, and then really how we view our commitment and our role in helping pay it forward and support the broader ecosystem.
That's fantastic, thank you. ACS, Australia's Digital Pulse report that is produced annually, outlines that upskilling and reskilling will be a major priority in any future digital economy. How is Canva identifying opportunities for upskilling and preparing the workforce for the future?
Great question. What is the future of work? So one thing that we're betting on, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, is we're heading into an age of increasingly visual and online literacy. And so you just look over the shoulders of children today and the kind of apps that they're using and how they interact with software. And Canva's right in the middle of that shift. So for the workforce, Canva is moving to become the workplace collaboration tool. And if you think about what did that mean for visual, I mean, just to call out, I think for me, something that really got me excited about Canva when I realized it is that what is design? Design is visual communication. And communication is clearly key, visual communication being so key to the future. We need to invest in that and help support, train, empower people in being masters of visual communication. So if you look at what this looked like before Canva existed, in order to do design and visual literacy, businesses, the workforce would need to invest in training, invest lots of money, lots of time to learn these cumbersome tools, whereas now there's people all around the world, including Australia, whose livelihoods are in many ways on the back of and really using Canva to empower them. So for example, startups are using Canva for their pitch decks, small businesses using Canva to do their social media graphics, and not-for-profits using them for fundraising. So I think that that's something that Canva really is passionate about, is playing a key role in helping upskill the world in that new shift to visual literacy.
Adam, are there any particular skills that you really place a premium on or an emphasis on when you're trying to develop your own teams at the moment for the next couple of years ahead, and how that will play out in your technology roadmap or your new products?
I'd say certainly, I mean, we have a very talented technology team and all the other functions, product data, etc., that work together. Certainly something that's really important that we do pay a premium for is, pay attention to is a better language for it, is that values and that diversity and inclusion, and adding to how do we make this product truly global and being able to reach everyone in the world. And so I think that's something that we do look out for.
Thank you. You've had plenty of experience in leading distributor teams. How has that experience helped as businesses in the current environment have had to pivot to remote working in light of COVID-19?
It's been very interesting times, I think is the understatement. I'd call out that distributed teams have been under discussion, if you will, for a long time now. There's always been value in them. And particularly, me talking about global products needing global teams. Having a global distributed team is really important. So I'd say that the main thing that's changed with COVID, the change was happening, but COVID's just massively accelerated it. COVID's humorously, it's done more for digital transformation than any previous efforts of people trying to get digital transformation to happen in the industry. So it's seen people much more willing to embrace these new ways of working. It's something that I'm personally extremely passionate about, and the team at Canva really is as well. And something that we coined this term at Canberra last year, we called HQ privilege, which is like, if you think about some of the different privileges, white privilege, male privilege, like there is often this environment where the people in the office, they can just have hallway chats, or like you can get away with certain behaviors that are not helpful for people who aren't in the office. And it helps to be really mindful of how you think. So we've done a lot of education at Canva, helping people like think about their role in this global and distributed team, even if you're on the ground in Sydney. We've laid some foundations that really position us for that COVID shift. That made us actually in many ways very lucky to be able to make the shift so quickly. Like we moved to having global all hands, where we have offices in Manila, in China, in Sydney, and people are all around the world. And so we now do video conferencing all hands. We have a great culture of people using video conferencing equipment, and also a huge part around knowledge sharing. And that groundwork that we had laid made us ready when the decision was made for us to overnight shift our entire global workforce working from home, which was quite a move at the time. So we've made a lot of changes. We've been learning a lot about our business and how we work while it's been happening. And I'm really excited about that we carry these lessons that we've learned through to whatever the future holds for us. And some examples of that, we used to, when it was someone's birthday or work anniversary, we call it a Canvaversary, people used to pass a bit of cardboard around the office, and it would always get lost and there wouldn't be space. And of course now we use Canva as a collaboration tool, and now present people with a digital version of that card. And people love that, and we're going to keep doing that even if we're back in the office. Other things we've learned, we had people using the employee assistance program during this challenging time, and we've made the decision that we're going to extend that, because that's just so valuable to our staff. So there's a lot of practices and things that we've learned. We were ready, but we've still learned a lot. And from that, we really want to bring all of that, those lessons into the future.
From a product development perspective and technical perspective, has it changed your way of working dramatically as well?
I'd say there have been some changes. I think it's, like I said earlier, the acceleration of that digital transformation. So it's pushed us to be much more embracing of online collaboration tools, as well as we need to maintain great practices around documentation, how we communicate. embracing asynchronous communication. Like we don't want to sit staring at Zoom all day long or other video conferencing, just giving status updates if we could do that in written text. So I'd say the general principles of how we work haven't, like, something that I say a lot to my team is that what works, what is critical when you're a distributed team is still extremely valuable if you're not a distributed team. And so I think those fundamental behaviors are valuable in either environment.
Thanks. And as people and the team at Canva look to return to the office post-COVID, what do you think the future of work looks like? And will we see, do you think, more remote working going forward? Or do you think over time, 12 months, we could be back to as we were?
Definitely seems the trend is people are much more aware of the benefits of remote work now. So as a industry, absolutely, I expect that to be a shift. In Canva's case, we don't have all the answers, but we're still learning. And we established some principles when we kicked off the whole work from home thing. And I think one of the big ones is just recognizing that this is not normal work from home. When there's a global pandemic, when people don't have the support systems in place, when there's a lot of anxiety in the world. And so we really called out to the whole business, leading with compassion as a core principle of how we approach this. And hopefully we've done a good job of that, and that the team at Canva feels that. We've been keeping our finger on the pulse. We did a survey, and interestingly, right now, we're at the point where it's 50-50. Half the office wants to go back. They miss socializing. They miss the energy of being around people, or they have a rough work environment at home. And then the other half, actually, it's much easier for them. They love the flexibility. They don't like having to do a long commute, wasting time, or they've got families or different reasons. So it's interesting seeing that split. And so for us, our approach is about supporting the different people's needs. That coming back to that leading with compassion. So in this future world, we really want to make sure that it's for everyone, and we're really listening and being inclusive. I think beyond how we've approached it with people coming back to the office or not, unequivocally, the shift is that we're increasingly more dependent on online collaboration tools. And like I said, even when people go back to the office, we're still going to be, bringing some of those practices. For example, teams used to run retrospectives with sticky notes on whiteboards, and that just doesn't work. Whereas now a lot of teams have switched to using Canva to run their retrospectives as that visual communication tool.
Thanks. And with the advent of Agile, we've seen many businesses ditching hierarchical work structures altogether or adopting hybrid work structure. What approach does Canva have, and why was it chosen?
For us, I'd say we don't get too dogmatic around any particular process. At the end of the day, for us, our job is about empowering the global design community and keeping that mission at the top of our minds. So we do a lot of things to keep our employees and reinforce having our employees close to our users, close to the product, and having that deep empathy and understanding of how a product is being used. And I think that comes down to us using the product every day. As I mentioned, it's used in a lot of different parts of the business as our own tool, but also with a lot of user testing and user interviews. So I think, I'd say some ideas from Agile are definitely part of how we approach it. And I think in key, like that, being adaptive, being flexible, having tight feedback loops, really listening to our user. Like I couldn't necessarily tell you everything we're going to be working on in 3 months' time. And that's because we pay a lot of attention to what our users are saying.
Thanks. And Canva's recently launched a range of new products, such as Canva for Enterprise and Canva for Education. How do you maintain customer centricity when you're looking to launch a new product? So obviously very good having a lot of your team really close to the customer. How do you make sure you bridge that gap between other parts of the business, in particular between yourselves at engineering, maybe your client-facing team?
Yeah, so our CEO loves to say, she's quite famous for this expression, we're 1% of the way there. Um, and that's been a running joke for as long as I've been at the company. That it always feels like maybe we're at 2% of the way there, but no, we're still 1% of the way there. And so, what do we mean by that? Sometimes from the outside, it can seem like Canva's done. Like we've built this incredible design tool, and now we're just kind of polishing the product. But that's not how it feels inside the company. From our point of view inside, we barely scratched the surface. And so keeping those teams close to the users and really understanding what is the potential for this design and visual communication platform that we've got. So those examples like education and enterprise that we're starting to move into. Like education, we learn that classrooms were already using Canva, but they actually have different needs. That we have teachers, we have children. We want being able to interact and have this collaborative environment. Whereas you compare that with, say, our enterprise offering, which is these large multinational companies. Actually, for them, what they want is consistency and control. And so, that may come across as we're launching a new product, but ultimately it just comes right back to it's an extension of the same idea, and that we are listening to our community and we're moving to meet their needs.
Thanks. One of the major challenges when you do look to launch new products is implementing actionable post-launch refinement. How does Canva solve this problem, that iteration? And could you give a pragmatic example of when you've been able to refine a product post-launch and when it's been successful?
It's always exciting to move on to the shiny new product or feature. And I think this is always a challenge for all companies. For us, it comes back to those guiding principles. So we work for our community, we work for our users, and we're doing what's best for them. So I think rather than just thinking in terms of like pre-launch and post-launch, we're in a constant ongoing cycle of learning. All the way from how we even think to start building out a new feature. And so we definitely embrace MVPs and iteration. Something that we say at Canva is a line of code. It only has value once it's in users' hands. And so that's definitely encouraging, rather than polishing and getting something to perfection before we release it, to really getting that out there, getting feedback and having these tight feedback loops. One example of that, one of our offerings is the presentations product. So with Canva, you can give presentations and do your slides. Honestly, it's a life-saving tool for me. I'm able to whip together slides 15 minutes before a meeting. And that started out just an extension of the Canva design product by adding multiple pages and then making it possible to present. And we got that out very early in users' hands. But then beyond that, we started with the table stakes. We need, people expect speaker notes and timers and these kind of table stakes features. But beyond that, now we're starting to move into much more exciting and ambitious, like what is the future of presentations? How do we build in audience engagement into our presentations approach? So I think that's all about just, again, focusing on getting things in the user's hands, doing a lot of iteration, user testing, and listening.
So can we dive just a little bit deeper on that one, Adam? What's been one of your favourites, whether it's Canva or in one of your past roles? What's been one of your favourite engineering projects? What was the challenge that you had to overcome, and how did you get it to market? Lots of very exciting projects I've had the privilege of working on throughout my career at all the different companies. I was really excited about this one project we were working on last year at Canva that we're absolutely not done with, which is the application of artificial intelligence to design and to that design process. And so this is about the intersection of art and science. And it's absolutely fascinating because if you think about design, there's lots of unwritten rules about what makes design good. People know good design when they see it, but not everyone can articulate why they find something to be good design. And so we have incredibly talented designers in-house as well as around the world, and kind of like taking the best of
how do we use their creativity, but use machine learning, build smarts into our product, and ultimately what that product ends up looking like for us is we're trying to predict and assist users through their design process. And if we know if we can nudge users towards making better design and making it harder for them to make bad design without them necessarily having to read the Bible of design, that's a really exciting project. I think you asked about what are some of the challenges getting that to market, and I think that's a really challenging, exciting, and hard project because it is a mix of human and people. It's design, it's data, it's product. We've got to make sure we're building a useful product rather than just doing a research project. And so making sure that we have the right balance between making sure that we have the right data approaches in place, but also that we are building something that people really care about that is useful.
Thank you. To you, what attributes make for a good leader? How does a culture of servant leadership encourage innovative thinking in a corporate environment or an environment like Canva?
Canva is a pretty unique environment. Canva is a hypergrowth company. And so one of the really interesting things that comes from Canva being a hypergrowth company is that everyone at the company is currently in or is stepping into the biggest job of their career. And that's huge. That's exciting. It's also scary and requires a lot of support. And so what that means for us is that nurturing our staff, helping train and coach, and helping people navigate that change and that growth is critical to the business's long-term success. And you mentioned servant leadership. That is something that we talk a lot about at Canva. One of our philosophies, we refer to managers at Canva as coaches. And we use that language for a very deliberate reason. It reinforces the role of these coaches, that their role is to support their team and unlock their team's potential. Yet it's actually the individual's ultimate responsibility they are responsible for their own career progression and development. And I find that mindset shift really valuable. Instead of being kind of the pointy head boss telling people what to do or like kind of being drawn to certain behaviors, I'm much more drawn, and I hope the team feels that way, to much more of a coaching and servant, nurturing mindset. Beyond that, something that we have at Canva that I haven't seen at any other companies before, we have an in-house coaching team. They're available for private sessions and programs. I've been privileged enough to go through some programs there, and they're really about helping people just break through their personal barriers, reach their potential, which is fantastic. And just like what makes good leaders, what makes good managers. I personally find it inspiring to work at a company where we have such great and inspiring founders, and they lead by example. The values aren't just words written on a wall; they are something that our founders and our team embody every day. And an example of that, something that struck me at the first ever company all hands I attended. Afterwards, I noticed our CEO Mel was folding and putting away chairs afterwards. And I'd never seen that before at another company. And I think that sent a really strong signal of there's no work that's beneath any of us. Like we're all a part of this together.
Thanks. One of the big highlights from Australia's Digital Pulse is that we've only got 28% representation of women in the tech sector. What steps are Canva taking to encourage more diversity and inclusivity in the workplace?
Our culture is the very backbone to our success. I've talked a lot about culture so far tonight. We really pride ourselves on having a diverse and inclusive culture. One thing we've done recently, we signed up for Project F, which is a social impact company. We signed up for their program 50/50, which holds us accountable for providing a gender diverse and equal opportunity workplace. Part of that, one of the things we did recently, we piloted a coaching program called Unstoppable Me, which is to support and encourage women to step up into leadership opportunities. And beyond that, we have a lot of training, for example, unconscious bias training, interview training, making sure that we're doing skills-based assessments and really trying to be as inclusive and diverse there. As with all of these things, this is a journey for us. We're still learning, we're still growing. One thing I think people say a lot when they talk about diversity is you can't be what you can't see. And so it's really important to have role models and figures that people can look up to. And I think from that point of view, it helps and inspires people that our CEO is a woman, an incredibly talented and inspiring person. Beyond gender, over a third of our business is from overseas. And that's really important to us, given that we're trying to build a global business, global company with users in over 190 countries. And in terms of like supporting and being inclusive, one of the things we have is we have lots of clubs as part of our culture. So I think the idea here is really encouraging people to bring their full self to work. So finding like-minded people. I did before COVID, participate in soccer club and band club playing music. But there's something for everyone. There's something for introverts, extroverts. There's language clubs, board game clubs. We really want everyone to be able to feel themselves in the office and feel comfortable in the work environment. So that's what we're doing within Canva and how we think about our team. Beyond that, we're also trying to play a role in outreach and the community. We take diversity and inclusion very seriously, and we've recently engaged with Pride initiatives and Black Lives Matter, and we have the Canva Foundation is working on a program with underrepresented people, which is about providing mentorship and training and driving more diverse people into our industry. And another thing that we're doing is partnering and working with universities and providing lecturing support to help just bridge that gap and educate people on their way into the industry.
Thanks very much, Adam. And we're coming up to our final few questions. So to our ACS members and audience, please feel free to ask any questions in the comments section. Adam, stellar CV, there's no doubt about it. But could you tell us what one of your sort of biggest learnings or failures have been during your career, and really importantly, what did you learn from it?
That's always a fun question. Across my time at Google, Twitter, and the numerous startups I've been involved with, absolutely, I've worked on a lot of products and features that some of them didn't even ship, some of them shipped and proved not to be valuable. And I think I would say those lessons, those failures are a huge part of who I am today, and I am who I am today because of those experiences, and I've learned a lot from them. I'd say like some of some of those products that didn't see the light of day, some key lessons that I learned from that is really making sure that we are building something that people want, asking the right questions up front before we sink months and months or even years of engineering effort, before we making sure that we have just a much better understanding of what problem we're solving, who our user is, the fabled product market fit. And I'd say another one is really like on the human side. Software is, despite all the stereotypes and perceptions of our industry, maybe from outside the industry, it's an incredibly human and social activity to build software at the scale of a company like Canva. And so I'd say a big lesson for me is how critical it is to develop, invest in people and relationships as part of building out software.
Thanks. Adam, just personally, so you mentioned that obviously you're part of different clubs at Canberra and the like, and I know speaking a little bit earlier, you were talking about some of the activities around professional development or interests that you have, such as a couple of meetups that you're involved in, one in particular that you lead. Where do you stay abreast of your own professional development around the latest trends, technology and the like, and also encourage your team to do the same?
Well, as a former Twitter employee, I give them a shout out. I read, I stay in touch with my Silicon Valley friends through that one. For me, there's certainly a lot of different places you can learn from nowadays, and in fact, too many. I'd say there's certainly some podcasts on startups, on how to build great inclusive work environments that I get a lot from. I'm reading I've got a little kid, so I don't get as much time as I used to read, but I try and read. There's so many great books out there that I've been recommending my team, especially lately. It's been in the kind of engineering management, organizational design, culture, architecture, those kinds of things. So I personally get a lot out of reading some of the key texts in our industry.
Thanks. And what are some of the changes in technology that have got you most excited about the future?
Yeah, this is not something that has changed recently for me. Something I've always been excited about, and it's particularly relevant today, is like, because we're all embracing remote work right now, is that what is the role of distributed teams? How do we build inclusive distributed teams? And then the technology associated with that to support that over time. You know, I firmly believe that we've only scratched the surface of what is possible to empower people to collaborate with each other. You know, the dream there is like the hive mind that, you know, you've just got, as a company of almost 1,000 people at Canva, there's just so much time spent communicating, and it's so easy to get that wrong. And I think no one has all the answers on this front, but I do see us getting better. And so in particular, like that shift to distributed teams and collaborative tooling, it's not just about replicating the office environment in a remote setting. It's really about like rethinking how we work, how we communicate, how we share knowledge, removing all those constraints and limitations. And you know, that future aspiration of us operating more as a hive mind of humanity, and you know, elevating the sum total of human knowledge.
Thank you. And final one, if there was one area that you would really champion if you're advising government on how Australia could recover, whether it's societal or whether that includes technology, what would it be? So how do we bounce back?
How do we bounce back? Yeah, I mean, I certainly think really encouraging people out there who are thinking about what to do with their time to really be on the lookout for what are the problems that people are facing today. Maybe there's some new problems that have emerged. Maybe some problems have been accelerated or, you know, emphasized by some of the shift with coronavirus. And some people have had tailwinds, some people have had headwinds. So I really encourage people to look out for those opportunities and really, you know, don't be limited by the old way of thinking. This is a really unique, you know, that through challenge comes opportunity. And I think there's some really unique opportunities right now in society to just take some of those constraints that we used to not even realize were there and just rethink them completely in how we're building out society moving forward.
Well, thanks very much for those insights. Our audience have submitted a few questions that would like to throw at you. So you've worked in big structures as well as startups. What are the pros and cons of each that you've tried to keep up at Canva?
That's very close to my heart, and I love the small companies, and I've had great times at all the big companies as well. And you know, I think I personally I find value in every stage of that company's growth. Like when you're starting out, there's this massive excitement about you know, starting something new and uncertain. Whereas I think over time there's some really exciting opportunities when that product is in users' hands. You know, I think, as I mentioned before, like a line of code not being of any value if it's not in users' hands. So like if you're too small, and you've got a small user base, like that's kind of limited impact that you're having on the world. Whereas if you had a really large company and you want to say 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people, you know, I think really trying to make sure that you're always having as much impact as you can with your time. And that I do think that's something that Canva's done an amazing job of as we've scaled from everyone sitting around one table to scattered around the world. Is I think everyone still really feels that energy and motivation and sense of purpose and mission as they're building out this much larger version of the same mission.
Hey, thanks. One of our members has asked, how can you expand on how a national company can be elevated to be an international company and the impact that this has on the company's culture?
Right. I think thinking global from day one is something that I would really encourage everyone to do. And I think the question can be taken two ways. Like one, is this a company that is serving a global audience? And then the other side of that is this a company that has a global workforce? To me, I think those two really go hand in hand. And so on the former, the global product piece, I think it's really motivating and exciting to be able to tackle a problem that is going to serve as many people as you can in the most fulfilling way possible. So I think even if you're starting with a small test market, even if you're starting with razor sharp focus on one persona, having that global mindset as the next step behind that is a really valuable thing to do. On the workforce side of things, again, thinking global from day one, if you're going to be a global company, the one thing that you don't want to find yourself doing is one day you've gone from several hundred people and then bam, you've added a second office and you just don't have the culture. You don't do good documentation. You don't know how to communicate with each other. You don't know how to do asynchronous communication because you're in different time zones. And so rather than waiting to become a global company, think global from day one, even in how your team, just imagine, hey, would this behavior that we're operating with work if we were in multiple offices? Because I think a lot of the practices that are beneficial for global and distributed teams are still really valuable, even if you're just sitting around one table at the early days of a company.
Thanks. What do you think is the best way to manage and encourage knowledge sharing?
Big question. I think one of the things that I like to talk about with knowledge sharing is proactive written communication. And so kind of what I mean by that is pushing information out to people rather than waiting. An example of that is instead of waiting for someone to go, hey, how's the project doing? How's that feature you're working on? How does this work? For me, anytime someone asks me a question like that, I'm thinking in my head, they weren't able to figure that out by themselves. And kind of like touching on the previous question, if they were in a different time zone, they'd have no way to wheel their chair over to my desk and ask me that question. So I think building that culture where people think from day one, I have information. Who should know about this? How do I document this? How do I push this out? And so, sharing meeting notes, sharing, whenever someone makes a decision, making sure that's communicated, whether you're using instant messaging or wikis or documents. I think having this culture of not waiting to be asked and rather pushing information out to people is really helpful.
Thanks. Do you think that projects can be effectively managed from remote home-based project managers?
Remote home-based project managers. Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think, touching on a lot of the things I said there, it can be challenging. And I think if you are in that situation, say you're working from home and you're a project manager, and say your rest of your team is all in an office, you might not have the culture and the practices to do that. And so again, I think it's really about, as soon as you can in your company, trying to build really great cultures around how do we communicate with each other? How do we respect each other's time? How do we write things down rather than just say them and have the words evaporate into the air? How do we do processes and cadences? Stand-ups. Some teams at Canva, for example, do Slack-ups, where a daily reminder they all write their update. And an upside of that is it means people who couldn't make the stand-up because it's virtual can still catch up on the notes and add their pieces. So I think there's a lot of prerequisites that you need to think about to have a really healthy distributed team culture that would make that remote work possible. But ultimately for me, I believe there is a world, and there are many companies embodying this, where location shouldn't be a concern. It's just you shouldn't be restricted and you shouldn't be limited in your experience that you have at work. You shouldn't feel less included because of where you live. And I really do think that's we're working our way there as a society.
Thank you. As a fresh graduate, we have limited skills, which are required by many companies to be hired. the requirements of most of the jobs have a lot of experience required. How could we build skill sets to meet these experiences to land that first professional job?
Certainly, I'll just call out, this is something that Canva thinks a lot about, and so we really, we don't want to set the barriers where it's impossible, where we exclude people from being able to enter the industry. And I think that's something that we put a lot of thought into in our hiring and interview process. I'd say, for the person who asked the question, really getting those skills off the ground. There are ways, I think, in the technology industry in particular, for you to challenge yourself. And there's a lot of online resources. There's obviously open source. There's internships. There's hopefully you have had a great experience at university or whatever background you've had. That can help you get your foot in the door into these businesses. But certainly, I think in the technology industry, above all other industries, the ability to self-start and learn from others online and develop skills, it's a little bit. It feels like there's more accessibility of that kind of learning opportunity than some other industries. But certainly, advice I give there is to really find opportunities to learn and to grow and focus on that at that stage.
Thanks. So have you seen a shift in how the aesthetics have changed among designers with tools like yours? And are there any really good examples or trends that you've seen?
Absolutely. So I am by no means a designer by background. And we have some people at Canva who are absolutely remarkable and just have visual intuition. And of course, over the course of time, our mission is to empower everyone to design. And so we want that to be that everyone can really just make great design and be on trend, be really communicating the message in the way that people should be communicating their message in this era. We want everyone to be able to do that. So for me, as a non-designer by background, I've been schooled by our designers in this. And certainly my designs have, I'd like to think my design skills have personally improved. But it's really interesting seeing some of the trends. Yeah, I think if you look at the template library, so Canva has a library internationally of over 300,000 templates. That's been growing over the many years that we've been running, and it's I think one of the greatest features that we have that just gets you up and running really quickly. If you just log on, check our design library, there's new, fresh, trending content being put out all the time, and I'm personally just blown away by seeing all the different trends that are popping up, and I'm trying to keep up.
Thank you. What can't technology do when it comes to creating art in Canva?
What can't technology do? I personally don't think technology is ever going to just replace the human element. Something that I am a big believer in, and this is not just for design, but across the board, is the magic happens when human and machine work in concert with each other, which some refer to as collective intelligence. And you see that across the board, even in natural language and other fields. So I don't think that we're ever going to end up with technology just doing everything and just boom, here's your design, it's completely done. We always need that human input and human element. And I think the other thing to remember, and this is true of anything when you're talking about something like machine learning, is machine learning works because we have large data sets. Machine learning is a reflection of us. It's a reflection of our data sets. It's a reflection of our biases. It's really, there is no machine without the human. So, I think that's how I think about this.
Thanks. Adam, next question is, how do I prepare for a dev role interview for companies like Canva? And we sort of spoke about this a little bit earlier. Could you take us through what it looks like?
My honest answer for that is we put some great resources out from Canva on what to expect from the interview process, the different steps involved, how to prepare, if there is preparation. Maybe I'll just sidestep to call out, we do at Canva try to like we respect that not everyone has, several weeks or months free to prepare for an interview. I think if you need to study and cram for an interview, that generally, I think that is quite limiting on certain types of people. For example, people with families and people maybe with more challenging situations. So I guess I just want to call that out. Certainly, I think for the dev roles, we really try and do some problem solving, see how you think, and really try and make it as interactive and engaging as possible, and steer clear of any kind of questions that maybe are kind of like the gotchas. So I think if when you reach out to these companies, please talk with the recruiting teams, and they generally are extremely happy to help you out with guiding you through that process.
How does Canva make use of cloud technologies, and what are your thoughts on these and its future?
Absolutely. Canva is a customer of AWS. For a happy customer. We've been able to scale. And I think, again, when I'm talking about like hypergrowth company, like hypergrowth means you're constantly provisioning for the future. And, sometimes for us, we see massive spikes in our usage because certain events happen that people, for example, designing cards for Mother's Day. So cloud and being able to have like elastic resources is really vital to our approach. I think cloud in general is not, that's something that we're extremely sold on. And we're not, there's no plans to revisit that kind of decision. So I think that is one of the things that has absolutely lowered the barrier to getting a company off the ground. If we were trying to start Canva 20 years ago and we had to build our own computers out of, with Lego and hard drives, that would have certainly been a distraction from what is our core business around empowering people to design.
Thanks. Have you ever lost motivation or momentum or working on a project which just gets bogged down with issues in development? How do you motivate your team members in such a scenario? How have you?
Absolutely. I'm human. And I like to work at a company that embraces that I and everyone else around me is human. And so I've absolutely had peaks and troughs in motivation, and I've seen teams that do. I think top line is absolutely making sure that people understand what they're working on and why they're working on it, and understanding why it matters. And that's a big part of the kinds of people that we attract at Canva, who are really drawn to our values and our mission. In terms of like managing motivation, I learned a really valuable lesson, which was shared by one of our in-house coaches that I mentioned. So they absolutely help us with these kind of internal blockers. So there's a lot of literature out there, which is like motivation and kind of how I used to think about motivation is like, you just got to beat yourself up until you're motivated, and then you can do the thing. Whereas there's a lot of research showing that motivation and action are more of a flywheel. And so sometimes the best way to get motivated is to take small steps of action. And then that builds a little bit of motivation, which builds, you can take on more ambitious tasks. And so I think when people are getting bogged down, feeling they're at a roadblock, or, there's too many people I need to talk to get this out the door, or people will say no, like using that flywheel of small incremental action and motivation, have your morning coffee, brush your teeth, just like get that motivation going, and then build that up to that team level, I think is really important.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Adam. Any final words from you that you'd, or pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share with our members and audience tonight?
Pearls of wisdom, setting the bar too high for me. I hope what I've said tonight has been useful to people. Like, as I said, I'm really excited about technology in Australia and the potential, and I love being in the technology industry. I love being in Australia, and being able to work at a company like Canva, which is a global company working on a global problem, yet being able to do it from my living room in Australia, surrounded by my loving family. To me, these are things that really excite me.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. We appreciate you joining us tonight, and thank you for answering all of our questions. Thank you to our ACS members and audience for joining us this evening. Our Industry Insights Leaders Series occurs every Thursday. Please register for our next sessions. Next week, we'll welcome Bob Hennessy, CIO of Lendlease. Thank you once again for joining us.